Without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Dr. Douglas Reeves, tell you a little bit about him. Dr. Douglas Reeves is the author of more than 40 books and more than 100 articles on leadership and education. He has twice been named the Harvard University Distinguished Authors Series and was named the Brock International Laureate for his contributions to education. His career of work in professional learning led to the contribution to the Field Award from the U.S. National Staff Development Council, now known as Learning Forward. He was also named the William Walker Scholar by the Australian Council of Educational Leaders. His recent books include Deep Change Leadership, Achieving Equity and Excellence, From Leading to Succeeding, and Fearless Schools. Doug is also the founder of Creative Leadership Solutions, with the mission to improve educational opportunities for students throughout the world, using creative solutions for leadership, policy, teaching, and learning. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Doug. I'll hand it over to you now.
It's my great pleasure. And that was an incredibly gracious introduction, but I need to acknowledge some other people. First of all, Nancy Fry really did heroic work in this book, Confronting the Crisis of Engagement. And I really wanted to, if you don't read anything else, read Nancy's chapters on very usable tools that you and I can all use as classroom teachers. Of course, Doug Fisher is a internationally known leader. I also want to acknowledge Blaise Simcue and his leadership of Sage and Corwin, because we would not be able to produce things like this without his leadership. So I just want to appreciate the fact that I'm one little pebble on the mountain of research that I think we all need to think about. Also, let's, colleagues, think about the learning protocols for the next 45 minutes. If we have to choose between my PowerPoint and your learning needs, colleagues, let me just tell you what, your learning needs are more important than my PowerPoint. So for goodness sake, please intervene anytime. Use the chat room, use the Q&A function, and my colleagues will interrupt me and say, Doug, this is what's really important. And we'll also do some 2-minute drills. You can also make sure that you can always stop. And by the way, interrupt me anytime. Some free resources. There's a lot of free videos, free articles. You may have confronted people who are all cranky about copying slides or copying handouts. I'm not like that. Research is there to be shared. So if you go to creativeleadership.net, you'll find videos and tools and research. Please copy and use them. Just don't sell them, okay? But anything else you want to do is fine. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on this next point, but I'll bet some people here are working on their dissertation. And I just this morning had a wonderful memo from somebody who just finished their dissertation after 9 years of trying. So if that's you, a loved one, a family member, a colleague, go to finishthedissertation.org. It's free. It's one-to-one coaching. Take advantage of it. We'll be happy to help you. And of course, today, I know I don't make things as clear as I probably should. So if there are things that you want to follow up on, please, for goodness sake, take advantage of the opportunity to follow up on questions and challenges, success stories. I learned from that. You're not burdening me. I will learn from you if you're willing to share your success stories with me. So let's start with a couple of research updates. Number one, man, the best thing that I've seen in the last couple of years, and it's been a rough couple of years, colleagues, is this science fair, where teachers will get together and say, hey, here was a challenge that I had, chronic absenteeism, behavioral problems, whatever it was, challenge. Here was my practice. Here's what I did. I moved from doing homework at home to homework in school. Here are my results, an 80% reduction in DF rate. If you want to take one big idea away from today, do the science fair and do it in December. Do it before winter break. These science fairs are the single best thing that we've seen. That's the good news. So some other good news, dramatic decrease in the DF rate. Man, we have seen this all over the United States and around the world. Decreases in suspensions, decreases in behavior, all kinds of good things that happen when we, first of all, stop the DF rate, stop the failure rate, and then suspensions, discipline, behavior gets better. Now, the other thing that we have to be clear about is what doesn't work. I think sometimes in research we're much more, peacock pride about what works. I think we have to be modest about what doesn't work. And you want to know what? Summer intervention, after school intervention isn't working. And props to Johns Hopkins University. They're doing the world leading research about what does work, like tutoring, like one-to-one support, and what doesn't work, after school and summertime intervention. And we've got to be really clear about what is not working. We're spending a ton of money on things that don't work, and we just need to be honest about that. So here are the things in the next 45 minutes that I want to try to address with you. I'm not going to read them to you, but let's get right to it. Here is what Nancy Fry and Doug Fisher and I tried to do when we said, what is engagement? And let me just digress a little bit about what our definition of engagement was. It's this mutually focused, and there's several things that I want to make sure that we agree about before we get into this. So first of all, what does mutually focused attention mean? It means that it's not one way. I mean, gosh, colleagues, I was a great math teacher because I knew more math than a 13-year-old did. But we got to be reasonable about the fact that mutually focused attention is not just me being a great math teacher, not just me saying I know more about math than a 13-year-old does. It's got to be mutual. It's got to be something that is from the student to the teacher, not just from the teacher to the student. It's got to be that curiosity, challenge, and learning. And that means, again, it's a two-way street, that I'm really interested in what my students know, and they're interested in what I can do as well. And that only happens with a psychologically safe environment. So how do we make this work? Well, here's how we make it work. The engagement equation is the following. Learning is a function of trust and safety and engagement. If kids are scared, they will never learn. And colleagues, if I could just say this to you as well, if adults are scared, they can't learn either. So it really is up to you and up to me as leaders and as teachers to make sure that we have a safe environment in which we can make mistakes, and mistakes are part of learning. If you don't have trust, you can't learn. If you don't have feelings of safety, you can't learn. And it's up to you and up to me to create a psychologically safe environment. So how does that happen? Engagement depends upon trust and psychological safety. And by the way, let me just pause here, because I think sometimes in the research community, it's easy to get too full of ourselves. You want another scholar to read on this? It's Amy Edmondson. Professor Edmondson did this research in medical schools and in hospitals. And so let's take ourselves out of education for a minute and listen to what Professor Edmondson says. She says, do you want to go to a hospital with a high error rate or a low error rate? And I'm thinking, shoot, Dr. Edmondson, I want to go to that hospital with a low error rate. And she says, wrong, because the low error rate hospital means they had the same error rates. They just failed to report them. The real learning happens when people are safe to say, we made a mistake, we admitted it, and we learned from it. So read Amy Edmondson's work on hospital safety records, because the same applies to us. Can you, and here's my respectful challenge to you, can you in your next faculty meeting talk not just about what did work, but what about did not work, so we can learn from our own mistakes? That's what we learned from hospital error rates, and you and I can apply to school error rates as well. So let's talk about the engagement illusion. So, look, administrators, I know you're probably on this webinar. I love you. I respect you. But here's what happens. I'm speaking to you as a classroom teacher. I hear the footsteps down the hall. Oh my goodness, the principal is coming. Okay, kids, you know the drill. Maria, I'm going to call on you. You got all the answers. Everybody else, pretend like you're paying attention to me. And I think I'm putting on a good show for my administrator. But look, all the administrators on this call know that's not engagement. That's the engagement illusion. And part of what Doug and Nancy and I tried to do in this book is to say, let's separate the illusion from the reality. And what we want to do is forget about the fact that the teacher's in control. Forget about the fact that kids all have their eyes right, always have their eyes on front. What we really want to do is to make sure that we say, when you make a mistake, that's where learning happens. If somebody already knows the answer, I'm going to call in Maria, she's got the answers. Colleagues, that is not learning. That's just what the answer already says. So we can do better than that. And how do we do this? Here's what Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry, I think, did so brilliantly in this book. They talked about connections. So one of the things that we need to learn about is, and after I finish with the slide, I'm going to ask my colleagues who are monitoring if there's any chat room comment. Let's stop and talk about this. But what Nancy said, I think, so brilliantly was the nature of relationships. And we wanted to make those safe so that people could admit that they made a mistake, admit that I'm not perfect. Our kids absolutely have to have a safe space to know that they're not perfect. And I would also tell you, given the nature of teacher turnover right now, our colleagues, our new teachers, 30% of our colleagues right now are new people. They need to know that it's safe to make a mistake as well and say, hey, I made a mistake. Here's how I can learn from it. Same thing with students. Part of what I'm really worried about is that our kids don't know about student leadership. You know, I've interviewed students. So 8th grade kids, they said, well, you know, we're in middle school. We're supposed to be the leaders of this school. But the last time we were in school 2 years ago was 6th grade. We don't know how to be leaders. I've interviewed high school juniors. We were supposed to be leaders this year, but the last time I was school, I was a freshman. We need leaders. So I'm asking everybody on this call to help build student leadership. And here's why. If you are the only one enforcing norms, if you are the only one asking for leadership, it will never happen. You got to have students as well as adults enforcing student leadership. And here's the other little research footnote I would add to that. One of the things that I learned in a big statewide study that I did is the kids who are already involved in 3 sports, 4 sports, 5 clubs, they're already the presidents. That doesn't help you do anything. What you and I need to do is to find the kids who are involved in nothing. No sports, no activities, no clubs. But if we get them involved in 1 to 2 to 3, it is a rocket ship. It's one of the most effective things that you and I can do to get student leadership really propelled in what we do. So, sorry. Whoops. So the last thing I'll say is staff relationships. We need to get every single person in our staff involved. And that includes cafeteria staff, custodial staff, security people. Everyone has got to be involved here. So I know I've talked too long. Let me stop right now and listen to my colleagues who are monitoring the chat room. If there are things before I go on to the next chapter, are there things that I need to respond to in the chat room already?
Hi, Doug. It's Megan. Yes, there's been some really great questions. So thank you to everyone. Sophie and I have been monitoring those. A couple of questions have come up about the science fairs.
Yes.
And a couple of our folks on the webinar are wondering if you can give, are there any protocols for science fairs? Any suggestions you have?
Exactly. Let me be really specific about science fair. Number one, you got to control the format. And the format is challenge, practice, result. Don't make it more complicated than that. And I literally, go to Office Max, because this is a big investment, colleagues. This is like $2.59. Challenge, practice, result. You gotta keep it there. No glitter, no PowerPoint, no ribbons, just challenge, practice, result. And what I've seen teachers do brilliantly is don't make it fancy. The challenge, for example, too many ninth grade kids failing Algebra 1. Intervention, move practice from home to class. Result, 80% reduction in ninth grade math failure. It's got to be really specific, really clear. I've seen brilliant work. And by the way, it doesn't have to be quantitative. I've seen brilliant work by teachers at the elementary school level. You said, okay, challenge. Not enough kids succeeding in literacy. Intervention, nonfiction writing in every subject. And when I say everything, by the way, this amazing teacher, Miss Bursky, did this in math, in science, in ELA, and which I'll talk about in a minute, in art, in music. Everybody did nonfiction writing. And then the result, you could watch how kids got better and better in writing. So sorry for the long answer to this one, but man, this is really important. You want to do a science fair, make sure that it has credibility with your teachers. It really works. What are some other questions?
All right, great. Thank you. Another great one that came up. How about some good ways to build student leadership?
Yeah. So I'm speaking to my colleagues here who are on this call, who are administrators and teacher leadership. It does not come naturally. You have to coach students on how to be good leaders and get down to the details. Tell them, okay, if you're going to have a meeting, have an agenda. And one of the best ideas that I heard, by the way, is end the agenda items with a question mark, not a period. And here's what I mean. If you really want to engage students, and this is good for teachers too, if you really want to engage students, end every agenda item with a question mark, because I'm inviting you into deliberation and inquiry, not just sit there, and listen to me do a presentation. So that's one of the best things that I've seen about student leadership. I really want them to be engaged and feel empowered to participate.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, so let's proceed to a couple of other things, because I know we're going to run out of time. My goodness, sooner than I thought, but we will proceed nevertheless. So I really want to offer appreciation to Nancy Fry on the what I think she eloquently describes as three-dimensional leadership. By the way, another author I want you to all think about is Sherry Turkle, Turkle. And what Professor Turkle talks about is this three-dimensional leadership and interaction with students. The title of Professor Turkle's book is all about engagement. And she talks about how we can have authentic conversations with our students and with one another. So Sherry Turkle is her name, and she is just a master of this. And I want to make sure that everybody leaves here not thinking that technology is the solution. We've all been through technology in the last few years, but now we have to get down to actually putting down our phones, putting down our computers, and engaging with one another technologically. What Professor Turkle does, so I think authentically, is to say we've got really smart kids, and you all have them, but smart kids can divert themselves away from interpersonal communication to things that really don't matter. So here's the title that I want you to write down: Reclaiming Conversation. Because in the last couple of years, what kids have done is have two-dimensional conversation What you and I want to encourage rather, is three-dimensional conversation. So getting away from it's all on FaceTime, it's all on Google, it's all on fill in the blank here, and in fact, have three-dimensional conversation, because that's what Professor Trickle says we need to do. And if we don't, we're going to have some really smart kids who will lose opportunities because they're checking their social media feed while they're doing a job interview. So seriously, get involved in what she recommends. Another book recommendation that I want to offer you. By the way, I guess I should say it's kind of unseemly for an author to recommend my own book. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to recommend other people's books. So Sherry Turkle, also read the book by Hari, Harri, and that's all about stolen focus, because I think we need to learn about how is technology taking kids away from the necessity of interpersonal communication. So I don't mean to be disrespectful about my co-authors, but seriously, look at other authors as well. A couple of other things. Mindful and meaningful relationships. One of the things that I find so compelling is that our students need to be known and valued and loved. This stuff will make you weep. Our kids need that. And it's not just little kids. It is our teenagers and our adolescents and our college students as well. They need to be known, valued, and loved. So how can we do that? For example, one of the things that I've learned along the way is that we want kids to have agency. And that means that and by the way, a great, immodestly, I will tell you, a chapter in the book is to have kids know to solve problems. You will see this in the book on confronting the crisis of engagement. And props to, by the way, the institute that has created these things. We want to make sure that kids know how to solve problems. Yikes. So everybody listening on this call knows more about this than I do, but we want to make sure that they know about how to be trusted and to solve problems. So here's some common mistakes. By the way, here, I don't need to read this to you, but take a moment to look at these issues that you see before you. I'm really worried about some of these things that you see in front of you. Nobody has ill intent, but I think you see these all the time. And what Doug and Nancy and I tried to do in this book was to identify well-intentioned things that really go completely off the rails. Particularly look at the last one, and that is submission rather than perseverance. I'm concerned that our kids don't persevere, and we need to have them have resilience. Of all the things that we've learned in the last 2 years, it's perseverance, it's resilience to come back to the top. So I've already addressed the issue of student leadership. So let me skip this and go on to the next one, and then I'm going to ask my colleagues to stop and tell me what's in the chat room. Here's what you can do right now. One of the things that we need in every classroom is human time. And colleagues, I know we probably have primary teachers in this room who are saying, oh yeah, Doug, I do this every day. But can I just respectfully say to my secondary and intermediate and high school teachers, go visit one of those primary rooms, because they're doing it every day and we're not doing it in intermediate, middle school, in primary classrooms. We need to learn from our colleagues, and our colleagues can really do this. We got to make sure that we know the name of everybody. This broadcast is being presented in September of 2022. If you don't know the name of your kids, and I know some of you have got classrooms of 180 kids if you're in California, but you got to know their names. And administrators, with love and respect, I'm telling you this, you got to know the names of your own staff. If you don't know the names of your custodial staff, your cafeteria staff, your admin assistants, you got to do that. It's nothing more important than telling them what their name is and stopping and calling them by name. I do this, and it's my mission in life is to know people's names. But we got to make sure that your meetings are devoted toward giving people time to say what they need to say, not just hearing announcements. So enough said. Colleagues, I'm asking those of you who are monitoring the chat room, tell me what I'm missing, and let's listen to our colleagues who are in the chat room.
All right, lots of comments, lots of great questions coming in. I have just a few that I thought were worth checking in about right away. First one is, please give an example of the kinds of agenda questions you would use to engage students and to engage staff.
So let's linger on this for a moment. So what kind of questions do we ask? So I think one of the things that ought to embolden us as leaders and as teachers is curiosity. So not assuming and I'm just speaking to you as a math teacher, because I'm telling you, I think I've got all the answers. I need to admit what I don't know. So curiosity would be, to answer your question, what are you curious about? And let me be really specific about this. So gosh, I thought I knew all the answers about this graph, about this chart, about this statistic that I saw in the newspaper. How would two different scientists, how would two different mathematicians look at this and come to different conclusions? And so admitting that I might be wrong is a really empowering thing for our students to hear. So that's one idea.
All right, you ready for some more?
Yeah, please.
All right. Someone is asking, how do we know there's a crisis of engagement? What kind of evidence is there that shows that things have dramatically changed?
So colleagues, let me tell you, if I'm ever lucky enough to be in one of your classrooms, I will not be the suit in the back of the room, taking notes and sending you an email. I sit next to your kids and I just ask two questions, which is not very sophisticated, I admit. I ask two questions. What are we doing? What comes next? And then here's the other promise I will make to you if I'm ever lucky enough to be in one of your classrooms. I will never let 90 days go back and send some memorandum to the superintendent. I'm with you literally the next passing period, the next recess, the next lunch, and I'll say, hey, you had 33 kids in the class, 25 were on task, 8 were not. What can we do about those 8 that were not? I also acknowledge when they say, even if they are engaged, what are they not doing while they're waiting for your next instruction? So, the way that I address these issues of engagement is I want to quantitatively evaluate who's engaged, who's not, and how can I get there. So I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I do think teachers really appreciate very specific and clear feedback.
Great. How about one more?
Please.
What advice do you have on how to remove technology from the classroom?
Oh, so my God, thank you. Whoever raised that. Administrators, I love you. I respect you. But if you have a checklist that says, is the teacher using technology? Sometimes the appropriate answer is, heck no, I'm not using technology. Thanks, Sherry Turkle. Thanks, because sometimes we don't want technology being used. And here's the sunk cost fallacy. Props to Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman. I know you spent a bunch of money in the last couple of years on buying technology. Forget about it. We don't need technology. What our kids need is human time. They need the opportunity to be engaged with one another. So yes, I'm not a Luddite. I know technology is important, but don't use it all the time. And just one little footnote to this, and then I'll move on. I've been in classrooms 5, 6, 7th grade where kids thought they were using technology, and I know this would never happen in any of your schools, but what I saw in other schools that I was observing, they had their earphones on and they were plugged into their pocket. They were listening to music, not listening to the Curriculum Associates or whatever the iReady stuff was. They were just, jamming to whatever what was on their iPhone. So seriously, stop using technology. Start having interactive, three-dimensional conversations. So, colleagues, that was therapeutic for me. Let's move on and make sure that I finish this before our time runs out. One of the things that Nancy Fry said so thoughtfully was the importance of high expectations. And one of the things that she said that I really believe in is it's as powerful as a year of learning. John Hattie, another Corwin author who I think is, literally the global leader on educational research, is that for me the standard is, what can you and I do in K-12 education that is more powerful than socioeconomic status? So in John's parlance, the real standard, John would say 0.4, which is 1 year of learning. I would say 0.57, which is the power of socioeconomic status. But what I think is undeniable is what you and I do in terms of high expectations is 4 times greater than socioeconomic status. One of the things that I really appreciate also about John's work is that we do not have a giant misuse of his research as, Hattie says there's 140 things. Forget about it. You don't need 140 things. You need like 5 things. Choice within boundaries, things like feedback, things like focus, a few things that have the greatest impact on student achievement. And we want to make sure that we have open-ended questions. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we make sure that students have the opportunity to do, as Stephen Graham would say, nonfiction writing and the sort of things that really matter. So here are the things that students do well. One of the things that we learned was that students had 100% engagement with emotional safety. And that is incredibly important. Kids need to know that they are safe, that they can make a mistake, and that they can return after making a mistake and get better. One of the things that I think Nancy Fry did brilliantly is to say we overvalue the right answer and undervalue the wrong answer. Listen to what Nancy said, because I think she was exactly right about this. We just overvalue kids who get hands in the air and do everything right, and we undervalue kids who make a mistake. And then what great teachers do is persist and to stay with that student again and again and again. So, for example, why is it? Why is it that teachers don't stay with those kids who have a wrong answer? Because they're afraid of embarrassing them. They're afraid of emotional insecurity. But one of the things that Nancy does brilliantly is to say, wait a minute, make it emotionally safe. Phone a friend, answer a question with a question. How can you have a partial answer? How can you just ask me for a minute of think time? In other words, make it safe to not know the answer. Make it safe to have a mistake. And if you could have one big takeaway from today's discussion, you got to make sure that it's safe to make a mistake in your classroom. So again, good opportunity for me to stop talking, start listening. Let me hear what my colleagues have to say about what Nancy says about making a safe place for mistakes.
Well, the questions are coming in fast and furious. Thank you, everyone. Some really good stuff coming here. Let's start with this one. How about Post-pandemic, what is the one thing teachers must include in their classrooms?
Yeah. So thank you. What a thoughtful and professional question. The one best thing is make it safe, psychological safety. And again, props to Amy Edmondson. Psychological safety means I can ask a question and not be shamed, not be embarrassed. A psychological safety means I can have a wrong answer and my teacher is not going to embarrass me. I can be guided through. And administrators, again, I love you, I respect you, but for goodness sake, you got to stop sending the messages that what I want to see is all the hands raised and kids with right answers. A really great administrator observation is kids who don't know the right answer, kids who make a mistake, and kids who are guided through from a mistake to an answer. That's real learning. And I just think we need to have more clear communication between administrators and teachers about it's okay to be wrong, okay to make a mistake.
All right. How about what systems do you suggest to address attendance issues?
Oh, I have learned so much for this. Thank you for raising that. My goodness, I wish, like everything else in my life, I didn't invent anything. I learned everything I've learned from classroom teachers and school administrators. So let me just very quickly give you two things that I've learned on attendance. Number one, stop doing the robocalls 2:00 in the afternoon. It's too darn late. The best practice that I've seen, and this is from a middle school in Connecticut, big 850 kids, they do a stand-up meeting. They call every kid that is not there within 60 seconds of the first day of school, first period of school. And so I'm about to tell you things that are probably violating every board policy that you have. But number one, run really quickly. I'm sorry, no, walk really quickly. Don't run to the principal's office with everyone who's not there. They called them all in 15 minutes. Miss Jones, your daughter is not here. What do you mean she's not here? All I can tell you is she's not here. She may be tardy. She may be absent, but they called them in 20 minutes and they got everybody there. So that's idea number one. Here's an even better one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ritz-Carlton. You may have not stayed at Ritz-Carlton, but that is a place where they give you a wake-up call. So we've decided that we're going to treat your students to a wake-up call, just like the Ritz-Carlton does, at 6:00 every morning. And if your child has been absent for 3 days in a row, you're going to get a call at 3:00. Oh, you don't like staying at the Ritz-Carlton? All you got to do is have 30 days of on-time, perfect attendance, and you won't have any wake-up calls at 6 a.m. Now, all I can say is that may be pushing a little bit of the buttons, but it really works. So seriously, think about out-of-the-box ideas. Forget about the robocalls at 2:00 in the afternoon. Start doing Ritz-Carlton calls at 6 a.m.
All right, how about one more? One of the biggest challenges for me is that I have students at many different levels. I teach third grade and I have students who can't read or write all the way to students who are just or above grade level. How do I make my lessons interesting, engaging, and meet all the needs of all students?
So first of all, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for being so thoughtful, because that is exactly what I'm hearing. And I've seen it myself in my classroom observation. Third graders who don't know how to hold a pencil. So you've got to be able to really deal with the realities that our students are facing. So there's two things. Number one, administrators, you have to give that third grade teacher the opportunity to spend more time on literacy. And I know you probably spent 90 minutes and you thought that was a lot, but can I just respectfully ask, if you had 90 minutes allocated to literacy in 2019, why in the world would you have the same time allocation in 2022 when our teachers need more time? So number one, and I'm assuming it's a classroom teacher that's posing this question. Give that teacher more time and respect the fact that they need more time. That's big idea number one. Number two, you got to make sure that you stop the assumption that they have to cover every single standard. The answer, in my opinion, is power standards. I've written about this. My colleague, Lisa Almeida, is the leader on this. Do power standards. A few things, not 50 things, 8 or 9 things that they do in science and social studies and mathematics, so that you then give that teacher time to really achieve what they need in literacy. So, honestly, I don't care if you have $1 billion grant. No $1 billion grant is going to give you a 25-hour day. Give your teachers the time that they need to focus on a few things that really will help them get better. I'm sorry if I don't have a more elegant solution than that, but that's really what you got to do. Gosh, I know we are almost running out of time, so let me just rush a few things that Doug and Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry would want me to address. I'm going to. Yeah, I'm going to jump ahead to several slides here. Yikes. So one of the things that I really worry about is that we want to motivate our kids. And I know everybody on this call wants to do it right. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to push back. But one of the things that we got to do is to get motivation right. And that is, I'm perplexed that I don't think grades motivate kids. And what you and I may need to do, and perhaps in a future webinar, is everybody on this call is a college educated adult. Man, you're upper middle class, you went to college, you graduated, and God bless you for, by the way, joining our profession. But I'm telling you, we don't really get motivation right, because we assume that our kids who are in our students in our classrooms are motivated by the same things that we do. Because none of us wanted to have low grades. None of us wanted to have zeros. None of us wanted to have point deductions. And yet our kids are not going to be public school educators. So I really want to challenge us on getting motivation better. So one of the things that we think that we have to identify that Doug and Nancy and I attempted to do in this book is that shame and point deductions destroys motivation. It just is exactly the opposite of what we thought was going to be true. So as I said at the outset of this conversation, when kids are scared, they can't learn. And you and I have got to be able to really change that, because we are attempting to shame kids with grading and point deductions and zeros and Fs, and it's simply not working. So the psychological safety imperative is that we've got to make sure that kids are safe and that kids can learn. We've only got a few minutes left in our seminar. So what I want to do is give our sponsor an opportunity to talk about this. And
all right, we do. It looks like we have just under 10 minutes. If you'd like to take a few more questions, Doug?
Of course. I'm just trying to be respectful of people's time, because I know it's late in the East Coast.
Absolutely. Well, I have a couple left. I think we'll still leave us a couple of minutes so everyone can have their time back. But a couple that came up. Someone asked if you could speak a little bit more about the power standards.
My favorite subject. And we may have people who are at state departments of education. And so can I just say to you, we love you, we respect you, but you got too damn many standards. So here's the problem with power standards, is that every state standard is presumed to be one grade level of performance. And yet everybody on this call knows that they've got kids who need more than one grade level. So they were designed so eloquently, and I again respect and appreciate all of our State Department friends, but they all had this crazy assumption that kids needed one grade level of performance. And all of us, this was true in 2019, by the way, but it's especially true now. They all have kids who need more than one grade level. So power standards have the following characteristics, and I promise I won't lecture anymore. Power standards say what has leverage, what's most important for kids to get to the next grade level of learning, what has endurance, what do you see? And let me use an example that I just saw yesterday, like claim evidence reasoning. You see that in 4th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade. So leverage, endurance, and what's essential. What do I need to do to get to the next level? And middle school teachers, I'm talking to you because I'm one of you. Every middle school teacher I know is saying, Doug, I've got to get them ready for the next grade level. And no, you don't. You don't have to do 50 things. What you have to do is to, buy some pizza for a 9th grade teacher and say, what do I need to do to get them really ready for you next level? So leverage, endurance, essentiality. And essentiality is all about the few things that you and I have to do, not 50 things. So that's it. That's power standards.
All right, thank you. What advice do you have on engaging students with learning challenges?
I'll tell you, my colleague, Kate Anderson Foley, is more of an expert on this, honestly, than I do. But what Kate would say if she were here would be learning challenges are not special ed. Learning challenges are everybody. We all have these needs. And I think we've made a big mistake in this country to segregate special ed from regular ed, when in fact, there's so much. The term of art that I would use is what a lot of people like Kate would call special ed. I would call good ed. That's what all of us need to do. And let me be very specific, so I'm not being too theoretical about this. One of the things that you see special educators do is incrementalization. They will identify, oh, Doug, you thought this was one task, but it's actually 4 tasks. Break it down into 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just good education. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I don't intend to be argumentative, but it really is not about special ed. I think this helps every kid.
Sorry, I lost my mute button for a second there. What are your thoughts on a 4-day work/school day or school week?
Well, I'm deeply conflicted about this. I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers. I will tell you that, for example, in a lot of rural areas, the reason that works is that they lose a lot of kids because they are driving 3, 4, 5 hours to go to football games on Fridays. So they might as well have 4 days instead of 5 days. And so I totally get that. I'm worried about the fact that we're putting a burden on teachers to teach, 100% of the curriculum with 80% of the time. That's the conflict. So I don't know. I mean, I love these rural schools that are, putting kids on buses and having them go to away games for 6 hours on the bus. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm not worried about what they are giving up. So yeah, it's okay. The other thing is the financial trade-off. What I've heard superintendents tell me is, okay, so I'm saving 20% of my fuel budget in transportation, which, as we all know, has gone sky high in prices. I'm saving 20% of my fuel costs if I can go to a 4-day instead of a 5-day schoolwork. But man, got to ask yourself, what are we losing in terms of student learning in that time. And so I'm sorry, I don't have a very smart answer for that. I think we really have to listen to both sides of the equation.
Sounds good. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it to Elizabeth Turner and her question for our last question for the evening. Do you have any specific classroom strategies for increasing student engagement within a lesson?
Yes, I do. And again, I don't want to act like I've got the smart answer for this. But Elizabeth, can I just, before I respond, ask what grade level you're teaching?
Elizabeth, are you still on the call? Oh, 10th grade.
Okay, so this is really hard for 10th graders. Because look, you and I, Elizabeth, have been there. Their heads are in the desk, their eyes are averted, they don't want to engage. So I totally get where you are, Elizabeth. But here's what I will say. The answer is equity sticks. Our primary school colleagues who do this with kids who are 6 and 7-year-old need to do what you and I do with 15-year-olds. The answer is equity sticks. And we roll around like our colleagues do. Oh, is she going to call on me? Is she going to call on him? And then we pick one out. And the way the reason that you and I resist in 10th grade having kids be called on with equity sticks. Oh, what if they melt down? What if there's an emotional problem? And there are ways around that. For example, you can phone a friend. You can, as you saw on the slide earlier, you can phone a friend. You can answer a question with a question. You can have all kinds of alternatives. But what you cannot do in my 10th grade classroom is just check out. You know, this is Doug's class. This is Elizabeth's class. You cannot check out. You absolutely, positively have to be fully engaged. And my wish for you, Elizabeth, is that you and I both have classrooms, however awkward it may be, that every single student is perfectly engaged. So I know it's not comfortable. I know this is probably not the answer that you necessarily wanted, but the answer is equity sticks. It's 100% engagement. Everybody has the equal opportunity. And I would just answer it. I'm the parent of daughters. This is especially important for our girls and for our young women. That check out my article that I wrote called Cheating Our Daughters. Because if we do not call equally on our daughters and our young women in our class, then what happens is those kids who are super bright and super competent will simply check out because, and I'm pointing the finger at myself here, people like me, the secondary math teacher, won't call on our girls. So Elizabeth, hang in there. You're doing the right thing. And I really just appreciate what you're doing.
Can you clarify what an equity stick is? There were a couple of questions.
Shoot. I'm sorry. Equity sticks. Visit, by the way, a primary teacher. The equity sticks are what our primary colleagues do, where they literally have a popsicle stick and they have the picture of a kid and the name of their kid. And what they'll say is, okay, students, here's a challenge. And then they'll move their finger round and round. Who am I going to call on? Is she going to call on me? Is she going to call me? She gets 100% engagement. That's what equity sticks do. And by the way, you want to see the master of the universe on this. It's Eric Mazur, who teaches physics at Harvard. And Eric will do the same thing in a group of 200 students. So please don't think this is just like Doug, the bleeding heart liberal, feeling sorry for poor kids. Eric does this with physics students at Harvard. So you whatever grade level you are, you can do equity sticks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, we are just at 30 minutes after, so we have hit our time. Doug, thank you so much for everything today. This was a great presentation. Thank you to everyone for listening. We really appreciate you being here. Congratulations to our book winners. Please send us that email so we can send those out to you. And anyone, if you didn't win the book today and you're still interested, we would love to help you purchase it. And we'd love to give you a discount to help you do that. So if you go to our website, you can use promo code webinars22 and you'll get 30% off the book and free shipping. So we hope you'll look into that. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy your evening. I hear it's Monday Night Football. So have a good evening, everyone.
And thanks, everybody. And please do look, I'm not saying I've got all the answers, but if you go to that very first slide, you see my phone number on there. I'm not the answer guy, but I have seen a thing or two. So please call me and let me know if I can help you. And I really want to do, once again, my deep appreciation to Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry, to Blaise Simcue. I think they've really done a heroic work, and I really appreciate and respect their work.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.